I'm not going to lie, if I would have kept factory KTM on my MotoGP Fantasy team this week, I would have also been flipping off the bike right next to Pedro Acosta. But was who I replaced them with, all that much better? Welcome back to another edition of I Told You So Tuesday, where we go through my pre-race picks as it pertains to my fantasy team. And this week, we're talking about Misano. Before we jump in, just a reminder, if you could like, follow, share, subscribe, mash all the buttons so you get all the MotoGP content you can appreciate. We'd appreciate that. Thank you for the follow. And thank you for everyone who's been commenting. So, my MotoGP Fantasy team. I usually start off by saying, well, the one thing I told you so this weekend was Marc Marquez was going to win all the races, and that's not really that big of a deal. Well, Marc Marquez had a little bit of a tough Saturday. He's human, after all. Makes a mistake, crashes out of the lead of the sprint. No more sprint domination. I mean, it was going to be 9 sprints in a row or something, or was it 9? It was a lot of sprints in a row this guy won, and he threw it in the gravel trap on Saturday, leading the race. Now, I'm not too heartbroken about that because everyone, and I mean everyone, in MotoGP Fantasy has Marc Marquez on their team. So when he crashes, yes, that's 0 points for me, but it's 0 points for everyone else too. So it's kind of no harm, no foul. I can't say I told you so that he was going to win the sprint. I knew he was going to be to the front. He's one of my gold tier riders, but I can't really say I told you so. But, no real skin off my back. Then Sunday came along and we saw a little bit of a different race for Marc Marquez. He was right there yet again and got to the front, was pushed very, very hard by Marco Bezzecchi, but Marc takes the win once again and was very, very fast. Seemed like he was in control. Yes, Marco was pulling that gap and pulling it tight, and then Marc would just stretch it out by another tenth and a half. He was never really going to give Bezzecchi a chance to take a lunge, go for a late move in that race. It seemed like Marc Marquez, though on the limit, was still under control in the race. So I told you so after all. My other gold rider, Alex Marquez, another decent weekend double podium once again for Alex Marquez at a track he admits he's not quite as strong at as some of the others. So I told you so once again by keeping him there. Now for me, it's the silver tier riders that I really look to make my moves. And I had sitting there Ayagura and Pedro Acosta. Now I can only make so many moves. And like I said in the intro, I wasn't going to stick with KTM Factory as a whole, which means I was kind of stuck with Pedro Acosta in my silver rider position, which didn't look like that bad of a projection. I mean, going into the weekend, he looked strong, not elite, but right there as a silver tier rider, I was pretty happy until that KTM threw the chain across the racetrack. I mean, on Sunday, this is a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of my team, but on Sunday, my entire fantasy team was in the top 6. I had my team there, I had my gold riders, my silver riders, everyone in the top 6 until that KTM threw a chain and blew the weekend wide open. So I can't say I told you so with Pedro Acosta. I told you he was going to be strong, he was going to be consistent, he was probably going to be in the top 6, but that KTM had other ideas. But I am glad I dumped factory KTM as my team because Brad Binder, awful weekend. I mean, that bike couldn't make it more than a few laps without breaking down. Brad Binder's frustrated, all of KTM's frustrated, and Brad wasn't even that fast or competitive all weekend long. So it was massively disappointing. So who did I trade my factory KTM in for? Well, you gotta go Italian. If you're in Misano, you gotta go with the Italian team. And I didn't have enough money for factory Ducati, but I did have enough money for VR46. And those boys came to play. Both Digia and Morbidelli have a strong sprint, have a strong main race. I don't think I could have done all that much better for my team unless I would have went with Grassini, who I still think was a little out of my price range, or factory Ducati. VR46 had a very, very solid weekend, so I absolutely told you so. But that is only my second biggest brag of the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, because I knew that Ayagura was not going to have the most dominant of weekends at this track. He was okay on my team last week, but I was looking to make a move to push from that 5th spot I've been in for the last few weeks to get back into 4th. So who would I bank on? I had a little bit of cash to spend, saving a little bit of money on Pedro Acosta, saving a little bit of money with VR46. So I added Marco Bezzecchi to my fantasy team this week, and I absolutely told you so. This guy was a beast all weekend long. From the first laps till he was holding the wooden leg on the podium, this guy rode out of his mind. I still am skeptical about the Aprilia. I don't really know what you're going to get from one weekend to the next. I mean, last weekend he was awful. But VR46, Marco Bezzecchi, this is home turf. Misano is home turf. It's literally in their backyard. They sleep on the corners at night. They go and roll around on the racetrack. They know what the tarmac smells like when it's dry, when it's wet. They're not going to be having their ass handed to them. Well, everyone but Pecco. But Marco Bezzecchi was not going to pull in one of those kind of turd performances. Sorry for being crass. I knew he was going to be strong this weekend, and boy, was he. He really, really delivered, winning the sprint on Saturday. Yes, Marc Marquez crashed out, but it was the pressure applied by Bezzecchi that was making Marc push so hard. And then again, Bezzecchi pushed Marc all the way to the very, very end of the race. Heck of a weekend for him, heck of a weekend for me, picking that from the very beginning. Was it a huge revelation? No, but I think for the money, for the budget of my team, Marco Bezzecchi, I hit him at the perfect time. He'd lost a little value after that massively disappointing weekend, which just made me sneak in and be able to afford him. And I really hope I can keep him on my team. If I can have a Marc Marquez, an Alex Marquez, a Marco Bezzecchi in form, and keep Pedro Acosta there and get Pedro up near the front, this is going to be a heck of a fantasy team that I won't have to really move much in the coming weeks. We'll see how they all get on in Japan practice, but I'm not planning on making a ton of moves with these four on my team, and I can afford them every single one. So I absolutely told you so with Marco Bezzecchi. Hats off to Marco, really coming to the front, leading that Aprilia charge. He looks like a factory rider. He is a factory rider. His first season as a true blue factory rider for Aprilia, he's not disappointing. I mean, he may be the rider. I mean, when you look at everyone else but Marc Marquez, I said this yesterday on the podcast, that Bez looks to be Marc's big, rival for next season if Aprilia can keep that bike moving in the right direction. But really, really great ride, and I'm a Marco Bezzecchi fan. I kind of want that purple Monster Energy hat that Bez was rocking all weekend, so I might look into getting that. Maybe you should too. So there we go for I Told You So Tuesday. Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, Marco Bezzecchi, Pedro Acosta, me, Can I say I told you so because it was the bike and not Pedro that tipped off this weekend? Probably not. But VR46 and my constructor is still Ducati. So in pretty good position, and I've leapfrogged myself back into fourth place. And again, looking at the points in my particular league, that's just probably as good as it's going to get. So I'm going to fight to keep that fourth place through the rest of the season. So there you go. Those were my pre-race predictions. That's what I get to say I told you so about this week, and we'll see how I do in Japan. And let me know how your pre-race predictions are going, and if you have any insights you want to give me for who I should be looking to pick up in fantasy that might be able to replace a KTM that can't seem to finish a race. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.